Awesome. Thank you so much, Gail. Just really excited to be here. How exciting it is for the Federation for Families with Children's Mental Health and our partnership as a family organization. I'm excited to be with you for this hour today. It's going to be a little bit of a spin off. So you will be getting resources. Look for the resources that are going to come after this conference that's really put together well and organized to be able to connect. But this is probably going to shift you a little bit in thinking about what you do, whether you're a family peer, a person yourself with lived experience, a community member, and or a professional that wears many hats. I'm hoping that you're going to get some takeaways in my years of experience as well. So today's session that you're in is called the Mental Health Wellness Toolkit, and I'm going to do the top 10 essential tools and or techniques that I feel really kind of both partnering with systems, community members, but families is going to be really important. I, as well as Gail, really excited to see that you're interested in this conversation and want to really think about this kind of outside of the box in today's times of what's happening. As we dive in, I think it's important just to kind of get to know who I am, what I stand for, and kind of what my world's like. I am the Associate Director of a family-run organization that is based in Massachusetts. This is my kind of tribe with me, my family. I am a single parent of 3 young adults, age 30, 28, and 26. I often say that my boys, though, I thought it was going to be a little bit easier. My sassafras daughter was somebody that really led me into different components as well, being a person that likes music, connected to people, and is my daughter that has a person with both Down syndrome and a feeding tube, and that's Lulu with the green glasses. You'll see that that was her outfit one year as we celebrated the stigma and the acceptance of mental health. Not celebrated the stigma, sorry, we tried to end the stigma. You'll see kind of in the corner over here, I have a diverse family, many different diversities and makeups within my family. I am a person also that identifies in the LGBTQ community, and I am now a grandparent raising a grandchild. So the little cute guy here with the clown hat and the binoculars was my 4 a.m. wake up call one morning when he was making sure that I was awake. And he came home from the hospital with me. My boys and my grandson definitely have impacted my life's work. I was an educator first and then left the education world and focused on intellectual disabilities and developmental delays, but actually went over to the mental health field because I could not figure out how to get support for my boys. And I really was just trying to balance that. So that happened about 25 years ago. I've been with PAL for 22 years, and I've been someone that I also appreciate, Gail, as both a mentor and friend. I tend to be a mover and a shaker. So hopefully some of this would resonate for you to bring the information back to your communities as well. So just a quick snapshot, PAL, and you'll get this PowerPoint. So just a reminder, you'll get the PowerPoint and the resources. When I talk about kind of nuggets of information, they're resources that I'm going to give to the Federation for Families as well that you'll be getting. PAL is like I said, we offer services free to families. We don't offer Medicaid services. We decided to really stay an autonomous organization so that we could advocate within the state. And that's something that we decided from the board down. All of our resources are free. We support the family-driven perspective. If this is your first time connecting to the family organization kind of network, national network, one of the biggest pieces is to, Google family-driven, what it means. And I'm going to send a nugget of information that a past executive director made, which was like a crosswalk of the differences between family-centered, family voice and choice, and family-driven. But we really lead in a lens that we want to get to family-driven. I mentioned we're an affiliate of the National Federation. Our board, all the way to our executive director, Pam Sager, who's not with us here today, are people with lived or living experience. So that's something that continues. And then we're also a member of FREDLA. So the peer support that we do is really to give families the ability to maintain hope. We support that primary family unit, and however that family unit is looked at is where we show up. We allow people in the community, youth themselves, to also identify as who their families, and our main goal is that direct experience of raising youth or being a person with emotional, behavioral, or mental health needs. We supply information. We help navigate. We participate in lots of different serving systems, and we've gained the respect of the community. One of the things I'm going to talk a lot about in this toolkit is gaining the respect and the ally component with system folks as well, to try to get to that place of wellness or what's best for families. Okay. So as we think about system changers, one of the things that I really do a shout out to a mentor, Dr. Gail Swaby. She talked a lot with us in a recent conference of, it's great to be a system changer and somebody that wants to work there, but we need people right now to radically start standing in the gap. We need people to get to the table, to talk about what is missing. It is, I think, an important piece, both nationally and locally, that you experience the at the table conversation, whether it's interagency conversations, legislative conversations, system of care with kind of the wraparound philosophy, but also detention alternative opportunities. If you are a community member, I'd love to hear, or you're a peer run, I'd love to hear some of the tables that you're at. If you want to use the chat, the tables are very important to continue to be at. And as family run organizations often say, one seat isn't enough, we'll take it, but we really want there to be 2 to 3 seats. And when we think about that, that's an important strategy for us to work on. If anybody wants to just add to the chat, if you're at those tables, would love to hear kind of where you are. Another piece that we also sit at is a lot of the strategic planning of state agencies, what's working, what's not working. We all have 988 in our states. And one of the things I think that's really important, not directly that I put this in our countdown that we're going to go towards, but we're actually a seat at the 988 Commission in Massachusetts. So my question would be, are you there? Do you have a person with lived experience? And is there opportunity to legislatively get lived experience to that seat? It doesn't take away from the professionals that are at that seat as well. But again, if we really think of the mindset of mental wellness, of strategizing together as allies, we're going to be able to help more families together. Another piece that we do, kind of standing in the gap, we often supply the information to systems on how to embrace, really involve and value and respect families, thinking from a lens of where they're at and what has happened. Love the shout out Philadelphia policy around family inclusion of loved ones, but also thinking about it from the lifespan, which is awesome, right? Just going through that whole piece. Kudos to you. I think that that's another piece, right? Really thinking about what can we do together, because it all matters, right? So that's a piece that's important. Advocate for legislative and policy changes. One seat, like I mentioned, isn't enough. I would encourage everybody to really think about what is being taken away and what do we need to really continue to advocate towards. So we are going to jump in. I've already said 2 nuggets of information, of resources that I'm going to send to Kelsey that PAL has made, but we're going to jump into this and have some fun on the top 10 kind of essentials in supporting families. If you are a community person, I really hope that you ask questions as well in the chat. You're going to get my experience, but I think that there's a wealth of information with the participants that are also in this session with you. So let's jump in. So number 10. First step is the journey, and is it peer-to-peer? So we know that for parents that have, and I often use my daughter in this a lot, to just compare intellectual disabilities and how there's different advocacy, and there's also still challenges, but also with health concerns. So for my daughter, we have something called the first call to help that can happen right away in utero when a parent knows that their child has Down syndrome. There's a parent-to-parent connection immediately. That's something that we have in our state. Wouldn't that be different if when your child was diagnosed with any mental health condition or had some trauma that you met another parent like you? I am a parent of a kiddo that had PTSD. And I often talked before I came to PAL, I saw that there were some people here from Connecticut. I actually drove to Connecticut to a conference, listened to the session, and they're the one that introduced me to the family organization in Massachusetts. It's not easy for people to do that, to find the other parent to parent connection that they need. So one of the things that we talk about when you talk about the journey with parents is to pause, to plan, and to practice. Give yourself grace in your journey. In my sons that I mentioned are adults now, there have been over 18 to 20 diagnoses for one of them. Every time there was a diagnosis, I had to pause. I had to see where I was in my stage. Was I in a place of denial? Was I in a place of grief? Or was it sadness? Right? It's really important to think about that as you talk with parents and you're giving this level of information. I remember somebody saying to me, listen, your kid doesn't just have bipolar, he has bipolar with psychotic features. First of all, I couldn't handle the bipolar, never mind the additional extra that was given to me. So I ask us all, whether you're a parent peer, whether you're a professional or a community member, let's pause and let's ask people what they need and what stage they're in. We're going to talk a little bit about sibling spillover later, but sibling spillover is real. And I'll talk a little bit about that and kind of what happens and what is a good perspective to think about. Alfonso, just a shout out, handouts and the PowerPoints will absolutely be made available by the Federation. So that will be coming. Another piece is, creating the way you define yourself and your loved one is the way that that family defines. So I got to tell you, in my culture, 100% Italian father, Irish and Italian mother, mental health didn't exist. Addiction didn't exist, right? It wasn't in my language, my family language to understand mental health. So I remember when the first therapist said to me, there are relationship issues. And I said, really, I'm not sure what the relationship issues are. I'm the parent, he's the child. That was my culture, right? That was how I was taught, though I didn't understand what was coming next. It's really important to allow families to define themselves and create the way that they define themselves. So if you were a professional that called my children behavioral, I was out to prove you wrong. It was emotional. And then as time went on and they got bigger and people wanted to talk about mental health, I said, nope, it's not mental health. It's actually behavioral. It was my way. It was my acceptance, right? There were things that were there. So I would ask you to really think about pausing, planning the education, and practicing with families how they can absorb what is going on for them. And remember also that you'll have to practice in making the road smooth, right? And that takes time. That's a piece that's absolutely going to take time with families and for the communities that also accept them. Another important piece is really ask them about their experience. I will embed a video in one of these slides. We're not going to have time to show it today, but it's about having a lens of intellectual humility. And Sheila Gausch, who is a principal and licensed social worker, and I have been training side by side with each other, but it talks about really sitting back as a person and being able to accept mistakes or asking more questions to get clarity. But if you were able to take that lens with families that are really in the toughest experience of their life, there's an opportunity to really embrace and to open up that connection to next steps. Building trust, we know in connection. I will say to you, one of my favorite things is that we have these buzzwords like culturally competent, family engagement, but we never talk about, you have to be able to build trust through interaction with families, right? To say hello, get a connection, be cordial, reciprocal back and forth to build a rapport before you get to a level of involvement And the third step of the staircase would be engagement. You can't just jump to engagement and check off the list. I understand it's a checkoff box for many state systems, whether it's child welfare, juvenile justice, or the mental health systems, and also the healthcare system. But the reality is, until you can build the trust and connection, it's almost impossible. Another important piece, and even in the toughest of times, and I understand the acuity that's happening across the nation and across local states with families. Understand that the parent is the historian and the expert of their child, but also understand the child has a voice. And I will always elevate youth voice because some of my youth peer advocates and specialists really helped me connect to my teenagers when they were teens because they held me accountable and they talked about that. But it also can be very different for families to actually have the conversation to ask their kids. I can tell you from my level of being raised, it wasn't asked on an occasion. I had a thought, but it wasn't often asked within my family that was something to offer. Understanding family norms and values, lead with cultural comfortability. Another nugget of information that I'll send out. If you are not comfortable, it will be very hard to meet families where they're at. So I often say, there's different lifestyles, there's different religions, there's different ethnicities, races, different countries. Being able to really sit in a place of curiosity, ask questions, but learn and be okay with the learning. And that's a piece that I would highlight as a takeaway. Ask for feedback often, always check in with the caretaker. I would say check in with the youth as well, and hold space for emotions with no judgment. And if you have the judgment, just know, is there a bias there that you need to look at? Okay, number 9, important mental health facts. So we know, and the data shows, that risk lowers if you accept children with mental health needs. The risk also lower if you accept children in different gender identities. It also, we know, suicide risks lower if we can get to a level of acceptance. I'm not saying you get to a level of approval. I'm saying you get to a level of acceptance so that that child knows and that young person knows that you're by your side. We know that marriage stress increases with children and with needs. We know, and the data shows, that parents doing well allows many children to have a better chance in success. And we know that nationally, suicide is the second leading cause for 10 to 18-year-olds. I talk a lot about these facts, and I have the staff that I supervise educate families about these facts. Talk to them. Let them know if they want to be a part of the change, of the shift. It's okay to need marriage counseling. It's okay if you're stuck in this, what do I do? I'm not really sure. This is uncomfortable. But how do you have that conversation? I wish and I hope, as a trainer of a curriculum called Talk Save Lives, I hope that we can talk about suicide just like we can talk about safe sex, and we can talk about drugs, and we could talk about safety. We've got to start having the conversations, and we have to look at the data for suicide is often delayed, sometimes 2 to 3, even 4 years from getting the information. We are doing harm to our communities without the data. And I also want to make another shout out that the highest level we know in the Black and Brown community, suicide risk is even higher. So we've got to really have conversations and get connected so that we can do that. The other piece that I want to do is shout out, if people are here from Texas, I read a report recently that talked about grief and the impact of grief and how important it will be to really address this with people to get through it. And if we do not address grief, that it will actually have more of an impact than somebody that has had physical or sexual abuse. And if you think about COVID, kind of where are we and what are those things that we're doing to help people? So we know that facts are important to us all, but I got to be honest with you, in my lived experience of raising kids, I was okay to be in a research study for a heart condition. I wasn't okay to be in a research study when we talked about medication that helped bipolar with psychosis. That's another thing that is really difficult, right? So talk to families, have a conversation, let them know that research of the brain is just as important as research for the heart. That doesn't mean they have to buy into it, but if they want to be able to give information back, is there a way that we could actually embrace the research around mental health to know more? Um, Thank you, Linda, for that data point. I think, again, the male component, right? 80% of the deaths by suicide are males. We've got to be aware. We've got to solve the problem, and we've got to have the impact. We were really excited. We knew this, I want to say, so it's not with great excitement, but it was really exciting for us when the CDC came out and said supporting caregivers is a critical health priority. Parents need other parents, but they don't just need other parents. They need family peers. Family peers can walk side by side for the most remarkable results with clinicians, with doctors. We've got family partners and family peers all across the state within Massachusetts. I will do a shout out, and I'm excited to say we have just started in the last 2 years employing some of the first juvenile justice in the state family partners that are connected to young people, their families, that are either committed or in detention centers. And that is huge for our state. Juvenile justice was something that impacted my life, but I remember for years talking with other family organizations saying, how do we get to the table? So that's another component of just really looking at, if we know that supporting caregivers is the critical health priority, what are we doing for the funding around it? And what can we do to work together in that allyship? Number 8, educate about systemic trauma. Believe it or not, this is one of my favorite slides, because it was one area that I look back at my lived experience and living experience even now today to say that I really wish that somebody had this conversation with me. I had no understanding what it was like, other than health conditions, to go to our children's hospital, see a child life specialist, get as much ginger ale and saltines as I wanted, be offered a sandwich. That's not what happens oftentimes in hospital settings. If you are doing that within hospital settings, kudos to you. And kudos to you if you've got a parent advisory group, right? To see that impact and that connection. But parents also do not understand the systemic trauma that happens around emergency departments, mental health, overnight arrests and detention, right? Not being able to locate a child. We use a term in our state called boarding. The highest level boarded individual that I had within the state during COVID was a young boy that was 7 years old. And he was 7 years old, and he, it's just, hard to wrap my head around. 7 years old, he was in the emergency department and he was waiting for a bed. Love to see in the chat box how long you think he waited in COVID. 7-year-old boy waiting for a hospital bed. We knew he needed inpatient. I'll add that he had trauma, but would love to make a guess just within our state, which I think is pretty far ahead in getting needs met. How long you think he waited? 21 days, 6 months, Beth, a month, 8 hours. Okay, now I'm going to add more. He's a 7-year-old Black boy who had behavioral concerns when he came in from a school, and he waited. So now how long do you think? Okay, now he's a 7-year-old boy, Black boy. He came in from a school and he had Medicaid insurance and he was part of foster care. So this is kind of a rocket for me, because I think all states are different. It was 96 days. I got involved at day 70, and it took me, knowing the state, having the advocacy lens that I did, bringing information to the table, it took 96 days. And when I tell you it took 96 days, within 3 days, he got a bed because the rates increased and we said we were going to go to the media. And that's not how we like to play advocacy. We want everybody to get their needs met. But often it's really hard for people. And there was a pre-adoptive home that was willing to take this kid back. It wasn't that he was a stuck kid, but his profile looked as such that no one would take him. It also, I'll just add to, it was his first hospitalization, which often if you have a first hospitalization, there's not a lot of paperwork, right, that's connected to you. Another piece I think that was eye-opening, the isolation, the loneliness and grief. Really looking at that lens. And for you, anyone that's here that is a community member, a social worker, a teacher, a connection, you have an opportunity to interrupt systemic trauma happening by having conversation and being the trusted adults that talk about it. We know in the education system, the data shows that if you are a family that is asking for an intervention within a school system, we know that it's higher for individuals if English is not your first language and or there's a diversity of being Black or brown. So think about that as far as interventions within schools. And we also know, and the data shows, that if you are in an emergency department for more than 48 hours, that's for anyone, trauma has happened to you as you've watched what's continued. So one of the pieces that we do, and I think is important in this mental health toolkit, is to talk about grievances, complaints, and rights. There are patient advocates everywhere. There's also really important kind of a state statute, and we kind of call it the nuggets, where we'll have parents and professionals be able to challenge, like, what does the state statute say? Where is the policy that says that? I have a great story for this. There was a local emergency department and your cell phones got taken away, everything got taken away. And they said, nope, you can't have your cell phone. I said, could I see the policy? They said, it's just what happens. And I said, okay, well, those of you that I've had the pleasure of knowing, that didn't sit well with me. We ended up having a listening session that was organized in 6 months from this local hospital. I had vice presidents, CEOs there. And one of the biggest pieces that we had, I thought maybe we would get 10 to 15 people. We had a standing room only 50 to 75 people that had showed. And we had parents that were lawyers. We had pediatricians that had kids with mental health. We had nurses that came in to talk about how they were treated. We had teachers that came in to talk about their students that they went to visit. And there was so much conversation. And I remember the CEO taking back and saying, okay, Meri, we're going to have a next step with our community group and come back. And then I also remember that CEO calling in 2 weeks and he said, Meri, I got to tell you, there is no cell phone policy where you take it away. We don't know where that messaging happened, but we need to fix that. And we need to fix that. And can you work with us on what our messaging is? It's not about just filing the complaint, it's creating the change, right? But sometimes filing the complaint gets to that next level and or conversation. I also recognize, as a person with white privilege, I'm a mover and a shaker, but I'm always going to talk about how the impact is 10 times worse than what I have gone through to the community of color. And that is something I'm extremely comfortable in. I'm comfortable in both nationally and locally talking about. I love to go to other states to have this conversation because we've got to really meet it at the mark of what we're doing. And what I often say, that is a huge piece, is what is helpful and what is harmful to families is going to be the impact. Another just shout out here is your insurance wants to hear from you. Mental health insurance companies do not hear enough from their consumers. And if it's private insurance and or it's Medicaid, we want you to talk to your insurance and tell them what's working or not working. And having that, I remember as a parent on the medical side, if my daughter couldn't get her prescription filled, feeding tube supplies, I was on the phone in a heartbeat. When my son couldn't get therapy, I forgot to actually call and say what didn't happen. We passed a bill legislatively, and our past executive director was a piece of this, and it was called the Ghost Bill. I think it was like the Ghost Bill. And we had therapists that were on the panels of insurance companies that have died. They were never taken off. We had to pass something legislatively to say that that information was updated so that that could happen. But again, that's a remarkable thing to just think about, that family advocacy side by side with allies of community members that want to help families had to get in front of to make a shift. So it makes you kind of stop and think. We know that systemic racism is real. We know, again, just overrepresentation in the special education system. I'm not going to go through a lot of this, but a lack of access to mental health system. There's just really data points. And then I am going to send in this PowerPoint. I would really encourage you, if you're interested to see what Massachusetts is doing about overrepresentation in the juvenile justice system and in school discipline. We have created 2 videos within our state that were, and I know that there has been some sessions in Seattle and another state recently to really look at what we are talking about in how we're either being helpful or harmful to young people related to JJ. So number 7, your to-go bag, whether it's the car, the train, the bike, oh my, you need to make sure that family members know that they have information with them. They have items with them. Having the phone charger, that's a great gift. If you've got spending money to spend down, giving families an extra charger, having them have a gift card. Do they have some change? Just like you would pack a maternity bag, having a change of clothing, being ready to deal with the crisis of any time. I often had snacks in case I didn't have cash directly, fidget items, but fidget spinners often are not allowed in certain locations because they can break windows. Favorite items. It's also okay for a parent to pack a pillow, stuffy, and a blanket in their car. The waiting game for many supportive services can be tough. And hey, I'm okay if the parent wants to stay in their car and they're going to have a good cry or they're going to be yelling and screaming and they've got a comfortable pillow to just sit there. This journey is hard. Communication, pictures. I often say to kids with teenagers, do me 2 favors. Don't take the cell phone away and take a picture of them with your cell phone, even if they're walking out. There is way too many missing children. And right now we are seeing more and more risk and more increases in communities. So the more that we have in knowing what children walk out in and connecting is an important piece. Lots of people know how to do Google Files now, having insurance cards and paper information. But again, in this toolkit, making sure you've got your to-go bag at all times. Another piece that's really important is to, and I remember this with my adult children. I'm getting much better with the grandchild that I'm raising, and he's 6 years old. Help them regulate their nervous system. Talk about meditation, talk about breathing, talk about exercise. I have to tell you, many of my 2 adult children, my boys that needed the mental health intervention, they were doing so many different modalities of therapy that they were learning things and teaching me. I remember my son saying, Mom, you're looking a little high right now. And I thought, I am not high. I do not know what you're talking about. He was talking about the level of his energy, where he was. And it was the language that he was being taught in therapy, but nobody taught me as the parent, right? DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, my goodness, it's great. If you can understand and work with all those acronyms, I love it. I'm on your side. I needed a cheat sheet. I couldn't do it. So really thinking about what do we need to do also to support those families. Another piece I'll just talk about in the nervous system, I really organized. Car time was so hard for me. Bedtime was hard, but car time was really hard for me. I had a system where I would call support folks, including professionals, in the car just to talk about something specific so that they were my outlet of kind of who to talk to support this next step of where I was going. And it didn't have to directly relate to what was going on in the car, but it was the distraction to calm the nervousness down. Journaling, grounding techniques. So I'll tell you, my grandson came home from daycare, 4 years old, and he tells me, Mama, he calls me Mama, just blow out the steam on the hot chocolate. And I said, what? And he goes, yes, just blow out the steam. So he started breathing and he's blowing out the steam. What a great opportunity, right? To be able to be supported and have that connection and be taught at such a young age of how to support the nervous system. Shout out to the schools that have the opportunity to also do these exercises. A huge kudos. But I would ask people to just remember, think about if you're teaching parents, are you leading in with talking about the nervous system, but also teaching the families what those young people are learning? So we know that survival, I want to keep enough time for questions and other ideas from the groups, but we're getting to number 6 here in my David Letterman countdown. 6, survival turning into support, peer-to-peer connections. Again, right now, could have a better time to talk about deliveries of food and comfort items. Food insecurities is real. It is real. We've got a big challenge. It's a big challenge for me as a person, but also to look at insecurities of food and then the connection to child welfare of poverty. And we have to get in the way and figure out how to do that. So I would often talk about from the child's trust, I'll quote the child's trust, love them, in can we be mandated supporters before we're mandated reporters on families? If poverty is the issue, if food securities is the issue, if insurance is the issue, transportation, can we stop and pause and try to fix the situation with the family before we start taking children away? Can we actually do that? And that is an opportunity to really keep families together, support them, and do that next step. So just again, I'm going to do a shout out and use the language in your own state. Do you want to be a mandated supporter before you're a mandated reporter? And I respect everybody here that has a license and has to report abuse and neglect on families. I respect that. But I also ask you to pause and say, how many families did you have to do that to? And if you did do it, did you sit down with them? Because best practice says to sit with the family, if it's safe, and actually file with them so it doesn't break trust. I will tell you, I am also a parent that had 11 unsupported filings on me for my children with mental health needs. I worked in the system. I have white privilege. I knew people. Yes, my children's behaviors were erratic on occasions. But for my child that had Down syndrome, I never had one filing on me. So it's a challenge, right? It's a balance, but we've got to work smarter with families, not against families. Breaks, planned and unplanned, are important. List of who's there. The notebook is kind of that fact checker of kind of friends. Again, I'm going to remind you in skill number 6 here, or tool number 6, pause, plan, and practice. It is okay. None of us are perfect. You're going to get it wrong. So here's a few pictures of my village. I really appreciate this. This was up here. We went to Detroit, Michigan, believe it or not, and we met with other family organizations, with Caitlin Ryan, who had met us there to talk about both homelessness, LGBTQ, and working with families. To the right, this is my group that I had learned about, great organization nationally, Justice Number 4 Families. That was the first time I ever met other parents like me that had kids that were incarcerated. I couldn't find that in Massachusetts. And I went there and really learned to shift my pain into purpose. And I would also say that another piece is that every National Federation conference that I've gone to just re-energizes me. It re-energizes me to push my pain to purpose every day and to show up for people and to work together. And it doesn't matter which state you're from or what connection, we've got to be in this together, right? So create your village and know it doesn't matter. Sometimes it's nice to have people outside of your state to talk to, right? So connecting to people is a huge piece. Number 5, everyone has mental health, addressing family norms, culture, and stigma. So one of the things that I do, whether I'm training nationally or I'm training locally, is I get kind of the pulse of the room and I let everybody know you love someone with mental health needs. I don't know if you're willing to admit it, but I want you to know you love someone with a mental health condition or know someone. Second piece, everyone in this room knows somebody with an addiction. It's the reality. You may not call it an addiction, but it is probably an addiction that can include shopping, gambling, eating, sugar. It could, right? It's not just the illegal drugs or drugs that people directly would think about. But again, addictions are real. And then I pause for a minute. Sometimes I will throw in a little bit of culture components and say, do you know people in certain religions? Do you know people in certain family norms? Do you know any communities that have generations of families that live in one apartment or house? And then I often go to gender. The piece, though, that I always stop to kind of come back around to Linda's point and percentage that she put in specifically again about suicide is the way the data is showing. All of us will love someone that dies by suicide in our lifetime. And that alone should be a problem, right? We've got to talk about it. We've got to end it. We've got to figure out what to do so that the stigma and the acceptance of mental health and where people are in their family norms, and we can connect to the culture and understanding that, listen, everyone can have a lens of spirituality and they could possibly get help for mental health from a therapist, right? You can have that and in both. And how can we meet in the middle? Number 4, special time is an important time. This is my middle son. This is my son who I'm raising, his child. That's him on the left-hand side, the day that we had a real special situation. The middle picture was when he was clean off of substances and getting treatment, and could really kind of see him again. And then the two pieces that you'll see, the images on the right, he went missing for months, and I just slept with the phone in my hand for months until I could find him. One of the pieces that I have recognized, and I wish that someone had a conversation with me sooner, was that this is the child that I often said, in a minute, I will be with you. In a minute, I will be with you. And there were behaviors that happened to get attention. And I often say, and he will say when he used to be able to speak publicly with me, he was the in a minute kid. He was always in the minute. His brother was significantly challenged with mental health and psychosis. His sister, right below him, was medically fragile and a part of hospice care as a child. And he was the kid that helped out with everything. And he got the spillover from both kids. We are in a situation now rebuilding our relationship. And it's with sadness that I say that he's serving time right now. But I am leaving the doors open for healing. I am leaving the doors open for connection. I'll tell you, it's not the way the system sees it. Kinship is probably, as a grandparent raising a grandchild, one of the hardest things I have ever done. And the systems, as I would say, the systems do not often understand fathers. I want to just recognize fathers. I haven't brought it in directly in this conversation, but I started sitting at fathers' tables when I took custody of my grandson, because I tried to understand why I was being pushed to pick which relationship I was in. We've got to do better, but also it's important to talk with families with multiple kids what sibling spillover is. And can you make that special time together to say kind of this balance? And I get it, right? Single parent, I get it. But I also know that it's important to talk to families about what's there. Number 3, soul care is self-care. Again, you don't have to use the terminology self-care. I've got to tell you, when I hear self-care, I kind of cringe. Soul care, healing, moving pain to purpose, whatever that connection is, right? Whatever it is, and shift the terms based on the culture that accepts it. Do not walk in and say, mental health well-being, it's not going to be embraced in certain communities. We've got to meet the communities where they're at, both culturally. And here's the thing, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out. You need to go to the communities and ask them. You need to go to the communities and pay the parents to give you feedback, to work directly side by side, hand by hand with them, right? To do that next step. So, two, healing is possible. I often say it's about acceptance. It's about finding possibly that spirituality. It's about teaching parents to get off the roller coaster ride. That comes up with young adults, right? When you have adults, you are often not the guardian. It's important to figure out how to get off the roller coaster ride when the kid's 12 years old, but balance that relationship is going to be important. I love this picture of these two people tangoing. I cannot tango. I just want you to know. But I would say you got to learn to do the dance differently, right? Raising kids with specific needs, like the kids that we have, takes the parent to show up with the way the kid needs that parent. I had to become the mom I didn't know I needed to be for my kids. I'm going to be the grandparent that my grandson needs, and I will be taught along the way. But I feel like I know a little bit more right now. But again, doing the dance differently and showing up with systems differently, right? Being curious with the systems. I often say to systems, tell me more. That's interesting. I love the one-liners. And again, I'll get some of those handouts over to Kelsey so that you can use those in your state. Resilience and hope, endless possibilities. In the toolkit, I often say to families, and I just had this conversation last week, it's okay if you have no hope. I will hold it for you until you're ready. Because once you choose hope, anything's possible, even when there's challenges. And I've had extreme sadness and challenges, but it's something that's there. And then the last slide that I want to leave you with, and then we'll have some time for questions, is I embrace all families, all providers, all movers and shakers, not only to jump in the gap, but to share your sparkle everywhere. Don't let anyone dull your sparkle. Tell them that you can't show up. Tell them that you don't belong at the table. Because in the family organization world, when we're told we don't belong on the table, we figure out how to show up at the table in more force together, because we know that the lived and the living experience side by side with the professionals can create a systemic change that will only happen if we're allies together, not against each other. So make sure that you share your sparkle everywhere. One of the things I'm also going to do a send out is really remembering that tip sheets and information directly for families has to be in the language, has to be translated, has to be we're looking at like a 6th grade level right now of information to give to families, but it's got to be in the language that connects directly to the individuals. So on behalf, I'm going to stop sharing my slides in order for people to ask questions. I've appreciated the time directly with you. We have 10 minutes, believe it or not, of time. I don't know if people want to raise hands. I can call on them. I'm also okay if you put something in the chat. Daisy, I love the idea that you love the mandated supporters. I think it's a really big piece. If I could get t-shirts on that, I absolutely would. But would love for people to raise a hand and or type anything in the chat box that you want more clarification on, and or you'd like to just do a shout out directly of what's working for you. Intentionally supporting the need. That's another great one too. Patricia, thank you. We share from our scars, not our wounds.
Meri, I don't know if you saw a question up there, but someone was asking about how do you give a warm handoff?
So it's interesting, we did a study when we supported, so let's say two things. In juvenile justice, we did a study, we collected data, and it's not okay for our organization to only reach out to families one time. We found that it would take 7 to 8 times to reach out to an individual that was connected to juvenile justice. So our warm handoff If we've connected to the parent, could be attending a meeting with them. It could be making a shared phone call. I mean, everything's on Zoom, Google Now, Teams. We would have a short 15-minute conversation. And the other thing that I would do is that it's really scary to go to support groups, trainings, and other pieces that can be super hard. We allow our family support specialists to go actually attend with a family and then step back, right? So we're going to have those phone calls. We're going to go directly to those meetings with families so that they can kind of get the comfortability, because it is scary. And that's a huge piece, a huge piece. But I will say, in the acuity we are seeing in our state, it's not 2 phone calls. It's got to be 5 to 8 outreaches, and we're being creative. I bought birthday cards, note cards that look like birthday cards, and we're mailing things to families, telling them that they matter. We want to hear from you. You're not alone. We're stepping up the level of connection to show all families that they matter. Yeah, great question. Thank you, Gail. Was there any other question? Did I miss? I can go
There
up a little
was
bit too.
one about any ideas of SEL language to support.
So we go directly, a few things. We go directly to the community to get family support specialists, and we talk with the community. I will tell you, depending upon the language and the component within our state, often it may take an education of mental health as well, because parents are connected, but it's a support. We also, another thing that we do is we connect locally to other organizations that specifically support both other language and ethnicities, kind of like I would call it like a community connections group that we would connect with, and we help each other out. We show up for each other. So if somebody needs me to show up at a meeting or make a connection and talk about homelessness related to mental health, and then I need something because, I'm unable to speak Vietnamese and talk with a family, that's also something that we've been able to do. And then the other thing that I will say is we have worked with our state folks to help translate when we can't afford the cost. So we've actually put it in our deliverables to say, listen, we want to support the deaf and hard of hearing community. We want to support the Vietnamese community. One school system, and I'm sure this is like many of yours, there's 10 to 12 different dialects of African dialect, right? We want to be able to support people. So we have been leaning in also to the state systems to be able to support that. When you're talking about bridging the gap between the SEL being taught in the schools, we're showing up in advocacy moments. I am going to just be honest with you. I tend to be a little radical at times. If a parent with a kid needs something and their language is Russian, I'm going to work with the parent to write the letter in Russian to the school. And if they can't figure out how to translate that and get us a interpreter, then we'll have another challenge. But I'm not making things easy when there's a mandate to support all families in the language that they speak in. I do think that we are seeing huge challenges, Daisy Brown, around which schools have the SEL programming for kids to be supported, but I would say it's side by side. We see it for the challenges for the schools and connected to funding when there's mandates. And we're also seeing it that the parents can't get their needs met in understanding the information coming home from schools and or about their kid. So though Massachusetts is I think we're a state that tries to believe, and we're doing great things in lots of many ways, and we're behind and stuck in many challenges. So I would just add that. Maybe others have some suggestions though around.
What I was meaning was
Yeah.
bridging the gap
Oh.
between the SEL lessons, like the language itself that's being taught in the schools. As a FSS, I find it hard that parents are aware of the language that's being taught. So when the
Mm.
kids come home to practice, they don't really have information to be able to practice with the child. Do you have any, suggestions on how we can bridge the gap between what is being taught, the SEL language that's being taught in the schools, being able to bridge that gap from school to home.
You know what? I don't have anything specific on the top of my head, but if you put your email, I'll put my email actually in there. If you email me, I can connect you with some national groups that I know that might be able to help you differently. Oh, it was going to the waiting room. That's not going to help us. Let me put it in here. But I will definitely grab that. Connection because it is a challenge. I see Kathy shouting out that NAMI supported you and had the connection. Again, local NAMIs is a great connection, right? One of the things that we are is we're in it together. I think that's another piece. And you often find that with the Federation. We are better together. Doesn't matter if we cross borders, right? We're all in this to be able to make that support. Ashley, I see your hand up. Can you unmute, Ashley? Oh, you disappeared on me, so I'm not sure if that was an accident. No, I think it's really important. I want to do a shout out again. Oh, here it is, Amy. I think go back to Old Mass. Yes, I agree with you, Amy. You make a good point, right? I mean, I'm a grandparent raising a grandchild, and I'm struggling to get on Power School. Okay, I've become friends very quickly with the secretary. She's already received flowers from me because I can't figure out Power School. Okay, but I am going to make lemonade out of lemons. I'm going to figure it out, right? Everyday math almost sent me over the edge. Okay. I don't know what I'm in store for raising this grandchild. And again, grandparents together, united together, they think I'm joking when I said, where's the Power School support group? I mean, I've been taught by family organizations. I'm going to ask for support groups, right? That's something that's definitely going to be there. But it's important, grandparents. And then I would also do a shout out to fathers, right? We've got to start showing up for fathers, kin, anyone that is connected to the young people that they identify as family, spiritual folks, right? Community members, anybody that's made that connection, we've got to start pulling that in together to really also support that. And Amy, shout out, if I can get anything available in print, it's really good. And you're right, I have to have an app to figure out Power School. Ashley, I see your hand up one more time. Do you want to try to unmute this time?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Hi.
it's working. You're good.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to point out, I think someone asked about bridging that gap between school and home with social emotional literacy. We have a program here with Tennessee Voices. I think we're presenting today, so catch that if you can later on how we can bridge that gap. We have family coaches. I'm a family coach. I work one-on-one with
Great.
the parent inside the home, and then I partner with the classroom consultant or behavior consultant where we kind of bridge that gap in between the two. So I just want to share that little bit
No,
of
thank you.
information. And we're in all 95 counties across Tennessee. So if anyone needs any support, just go to our website at tennesseevoices.org.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley. I'm glad that you were able to unmute and I put your organization in there and TennesseeVoices.org. So definitely make that connection. Okay. It is so true, James. It's, I've learned a lot sitting at the fatherhood tables. It's an important piece. So thank you for your work that you do. And thank you to all of you in supporting the families that you support. It's a high level of acuity. And I just want to thank you for what you do and for showing up here today. The Federation and organizations like PAL and Tennessee Voices and many others that are here with you today are in your neighborhood to really support you.